Hey everyone, welcome to On Tap. I'm Chris, and I'm not an expert, just a guy who enjoys good beer. Let us venture to Belgium once again. Well, if you've seen the channel before, it's once again, but if you're new to the channel, hi. Let us venture to Belgium and talk about the beer Duvel, and also ask ourselves, why is this beer so popular? So walk into almost any nice grocery store, let alone beer store, and you've probably seen this beer, Duvel. This is a widely available Belgian beer. However, at the same time, it's generally considered to be quite premium, which, at least in my opinion, premium beer generally means it's not very common. It's gonna cost more, it's generally only gonna be served at kind of nicer bars and restaurants, and you might find it in very particular locales. But Duvel is very common. So why is this? How do you have this very common yet high market Belgian ale? And also, more importantly, how does it taste? First, let's establish that Duvel is not actually the name of a brewery, it's the name of a beer. The brewery that originally created Duvel, the Brouwerij Moordgat, my Dutch friend's gonna kill me on that pronunciation, was founded in 1871, which makes it pretty recent in the scheme of Belgian breweries. Nonetheless, despite having been founded relatively recently, the Brouwerij Moordgat was able to make a real name for itself with the beer Duvel. So much so that the brewery actually renamed itself Duvel Moordgat, a name that it still holds today. Also, I understand that it's pronounced Duvel, not Duvel. So we're going with the Dutch pronunciation, not French pronunciation. And the reason for that is that the beer is from the town of Bredonk, which is located in Flanders, the northern half of Belgium, and in Flanders people speak Dutch. Well, they technically speak Flemish, which is a dialect of Dutch, but you know what I mean. And in this particular region, Duvel actually means devil in the local Flemish dialect that people speak in Bredonk. Also, the beer got the name Devil because it had a high enough alcohol content that was woven into the beer so well that when people drank it, they referred to it as a devil of a beer. Since it did the job pretty quickly and it didn't really taste as harsh as something that you'd otherwise think has that much alcohol in it. Kind of like the beer version of a Long Island iced tea. Duvel was kind of invented in 1918 when it was originally known as Victory Ale in honor of the Allied victory in World War I that year. But that beer was a lot darker than the one that we know today. It was then renamed Duvel in 1923. Fast forward to the 1960s and the Moordgats, the family that ran the brewery, hired Dr. Jean de Clercq, a brewing scientist at the top of his game, to come on board and help them out. Incidentally, de Clercq had actually worked with the Trappist monks at the Scoumont Abbey where they brew Chimay, and de Clercq was actually instrumental in creating Chimay Blue, which in my opinion is an excellent beer. Anyway, once de Clercq was on board with the Moordgats, he essentially re-engineered their Duvel beer into a form in 1970 that we would now recognize as the Duvel you can buy today. De Clercq basically created, in effect, a hybrid, something that was called a Belgian strong golden ale. Basically what this was a beer that was produced using the general techniques one would associate with traditional Belgian ales, but which would have certain components like a very light color, high carbonation, and a sort of hoppy dryness one would associate with something like a lager. And we all know how people around planet Earth love their lagers. So with this new style of beer, Duvel really started taking off in about the 1990s. That is in effect what Duvel is. It is on one hand a Belgian ale because it's got sort of the high alcohol content, depth of flavor, and just kind of fuller bodied feeling you get from kind of classic Belgian beer, while at the same time it's got light color, high carbonation, and bitter hoppy dryness you associate with Pilsners. Another thing the brewery did is they created a specific type of glass for Duvel, which eventually became a pretty iconic piece of glassware, and it looks like this. But most importantly, Duvel became a globally recognized but widely available high-end Belgian beer due to extreme business acumen and calculated risk-taking on the part of its owners. Ever since its founding, the brewery has been entirely family-run, and by the 1990s, the new CEO, Michiel Moordgat, took over in 1991 at only 24 years of age. What Michiel and his brothers did was they basically bought all of the outstanding shares from their distant family members and then floated the company on the Belgian stock market. And floating is where you basically sell some but not all of the shares of your company to outside investors. The gamble really paid off, as the stock price increased so much that Michiel and his brothers were able to use the extra cash to start buying up other breweries. First, they bought a couple of small local Belgian ones, but then eventually they started buying up small to medium-sized breweries in other parts of Europe, as well as even in the US. They purchased Ommegang, an upstate New York brewery, in 2001. And at some point I'll do a video on Ommegang. So after these purchases, which threw off more money and thus allowed for the production of far more Duvel beer, the Moordgats then bought back all of the public outstanding shares in 2012, thus once again making the company a 100% family-run business, despite having scaled massively the size of said family business. Smart guys. And thus, enough Duvel beer was produced that we could all find it in our local beer stores, nice supermarkets, and upscale restaurants and bars. I mean, okay, maybe I'm overstating a little bit how available this beer is, but come on, if you live in, I mean, even just generally the greater metro area of a modern city in a modern developed country, you've definitely seen this beer and associated it with quality Belgian ale. It's a step above Stella, that's all I'm saying. These days, the Duvel Moordgat brewery is riding high and very much maintaining its reputation as a producer of quality Belgian ale. You can find Duvel in over 50 countries worldwide, and the brewery produces over 1.8 million barrels of Duvel beer every year, which is a lot of beer if we're talking about better quality Belgian ales. And now, let us find out which Duvel beer is best, at least according to yours truly. Starting with the lineup, and yes, there are multiple varieties. There are 3 types of Duvel beers, all of which we'll be trying today. They are Duvel Original, the original classic Duvel Belgian ale. This beer clocks in at 8.5% ABV and is notable for having some slightly dry citrusy notes, some hoppy notes, a bit of fruitiness, and some slightly sweet sort of alcohol flavor in it. The brewers are also very clear that this beer should be consumed at 5 degrees Celsius or 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Duvel 6.66. 666, yes, you did hear that correct, as in the number of the beast, i.e. the devil. Well, if you're a practicing Christian. For everyone else, it's just sort of a fun number. But yes, this beer does indeed have 6.66% ABV. This is a blonde ale, so it's going to have sort of a softer, more fruity flavor profile compared to the original Duvel. And it was also only released in 2021, making it a very new addition to the Duvel lineup. Triple hop, Citra. Technically, there are 2 subcategories of triple hop, Citra and Cashmere. Today we're going to be trying Citra, though I understand the beers are essentially equivalent. They technically have a slightly different 3rd strain of hops, but they taste largely the same. This beer is going to be going full speed ahead with total hoppy dryness. Think of it as like the Belgian ale version of a turbo strength IPA, and it's also going to have some notes of tropical fruit and grapefruit. So let's try some Duvel beers. First up, we have Duvel, the original. Now, one of the things about this beer that I didn't mention is that it's very well known for having an insane head that pours out when you pour out the beer. Look at that. I mean, that's almost 50% of this glass is the head of the beer. And as we can see, yes, it's a very, very pale color. I mean, again, almost like a straw yellow golden color you'd associate with, well, something like a Pilsner style lager. That head looks a little bit better. So yeah, very clear color. Yeah, so I'm getting a very sort of sharp, dry citrus kind of aroma to this. Let's take a taste. The thing about this beer is it is very kind of deep yet sharp and citrusy. It has those 2 elements, the element of the richness and kind of the high alcoholness of a Belgian ale, but also the hoppy dryness and the somewhat lighter body of what you'd think of as a Pilsner. And then it's got this really sharp, dry, lemony note to it. So yes, it is a Belgian ale. It's not a lager, but it's a very interesting blend of these different characteristics. It's got this foundation, this complexity, this depth to it that you would not have if you had a lager. The hops and the lemon really make this feel just like a very refreshing beer, like a very good sort of kind of summery beer. It's a very particular flavor. Some complexity, like still a lighter body but with a little bit of weight to it for Belgian ale, but then also that crisp, hoppy, dry, citrusy, lemony note that you would get, that's sort of a blend of both like a Belgian, almost like a summer ale, and then also a lager, sort of, Pilsner style lager. So take a second taste. Lemony, dry, sharp, little hoppy, with some depth to a lighter bodied beer. So next up, we have Duvel 666, or Duvel 6.66, whichever one we want to go with. Very much keeping in sort of line with the theme of devils and all of that, right? Originally Duvel, right, meaning devil in a Flemish dialect of Dutch. Also, one of the things I just want to note kind of here on the back is they've got this nice sort of artwork. And when I take the third one out, I'll kind of show you. But if you can kind of see there, right? And also we have a bunch of devils dancing around the big D. We see that here. This one's more about your pouring skills, like how do you pour Duvel. Doubtless they've probably received comment from people about the sheer amount of foamy head that forms up on Duvel beers. So maybe they're taking steps to educate people on that. So let's pour this at 45 degrees. Interesting. Now this one, the 666, does not actually form nearly the same amount of head. And this is indeed a much more golden beer. This is more of a straw yellow. This is more of a, just a middle of the road golden ale. And it also smells a little sweeter and a little fruitier. Cheers. That is much softer. It's much smoother than the original. It is more of like kind of a blonde ale. It's got just kind of a full mouthfeel to it. It's kind of smooth. All of the notes are a bit more understated. There aren't as many like really sharp, dry, hoppy or citrusy notes, or even that underpinning of alcohol. Obviously, the alcohol here is, it's higher than kind of your typical 5%, but it's not fully at a 8.5%. So this is, I would say, in some ways it's a more easily drinkable beer than this one, though this one I think has more particular and unique flavors to it. This one is a bit more just, it's a very, very well crafted Belgian blonde ale. But let me take a second taste, see if I can get more notes on the second round. I'm gonna say kind of orangey flavor to this. It's really, really, really subtle. It's just there kind of very much at the back of the flavor profile, if you will. This one, the lemon is very clear and upfront. This one, orange, is really, really towards the back, and it's really kind of woven in there more. It's got that just nice, rich, full, well-crafted Belgian ale mouthfeel to it. Doesn't feel thin in any sense of the word. But yeah, it's just a little softer, a little muted, little more understated relative to the original, and it also has very, very, very little hoppy dryness. There's a touch. There's maybe a little note, a little hoppy note to this, just like there's a little hint of an orange note. But they're both sort of hanging out in the back and woven into a very sort of nice, middle of the road, well-crafted Belgian ale. So yeah, I'll put that there. Last and finally, we have Triple Hop Citra, the Belgian ale version of a turbo strength IPA. The back of this, actually, we have essentially the Hydra, right? So that has wings on it, but I use is essentially Hydra, right? The multi-headed monster that Hercules or Heracles fought in Greek mythology. But the heads are all hops. All right, let's go pour here. I didn't pour that at a 45-degree angle. It's sort of a pale golden. It's less golden than the 666, but it's a little bit lighter than it's a little darker than the original. Similar aroma actually to the original Duvel, sort of a fruity, citrusy, hoppy dryness. Give me a taste. That's a very interesting beer, actually. That's really interesting. So I was expecting that I was gonna drink this and it was just gonna basically taste like a triple turbo, American IPA. And this tastes very unique. It tastes almost like no beer I've ever had before. I don't mean it's crazy or weird or anything like that. Like if you had this, you'd think, okay, you know, it tastes like a hoppy beer. But if we delve into it a second, there are some elements here that are a little unique. The thing about this beer is it has very clear hoppy notes that hit you just as you drink it, but those notes disappear very quickly. And after you finish taking a drink, what you're left with is more of the feeling in your palate of a Belgian ale that's not exceptionally triple hop turbo strength IPA style, you know, something like in this realm. So it goes from being very, very hoppy to being a little bit just kind of you know, smooth and full in its mouth feeling. The other thing too about it is the hop notes, I don't feel like they completely take over the whole beer. They're not controlling kind of everything and every aspect of your palate. The hop notes are like very distinctly on top of the structure of a a proper golden sort of Belgian ale. And it's a very nice blend of both things. It is essentially just a very hoppy Belgian ale. It is not an IPA. And I'm gonna try to figure out how to explain this almost in a better way, where it's the idea, right, that the hop notes exist on top of the main Belgian ale structure, and those hop notes are very bright in your palate, but then they disappear very quickly, and you're left with the remains of a classic Belgian ale, which is a very interesting drinking experience. Very, very strong, dry, and I think the grapefruit too, that dry, I tried grapefruit. I always think of grapefruit as a very dry fruit flavor, right? Where it kind of, but yeah, strong, hoppy, grapefruity dryness that really leads on that drink. And then it disappears very quickly. And there's a little bit of dryness left in your palate, but otherwise you feel like you're drinking a Belgian ale. Very interesting. All right, so I thought about my assessment and this is my ranking. So first, and I've said this in some episodes before, I want to be clear, all of these are very nice beers. So really what I'm ranking these on, given that they're all nice beers, is how unique and how specific are some of the flavors that you're getting in essentially the artistry of the beer. And as such, I've put 666 in last place. This beer is perfectly enjoyable to drink. It is very smooth. It has some really subtle notes of orange, little subtle dryness, but mostly what you're getting is just a very nice, medium strength, well brewed, golden, or blonde rather, sort of blonde Belgian ale, Belgian blonde ale. This is, in some ways, actually, of the three, this is the most easily drinkable, but I think because it's more understated, it's more soft, there isn't as many sort of unique characteristics that are jumping out at me. I'm putting this one in last place. So the triple hop and the Duvel original I've kind of tied for first, and again I've done with my ranking in other videos, right? I'm putting these next to each other to represent the fact that I still am going to put the original in sort of leading with first, but this comes down to more, I think, just personal preference. The triple hop, what I really like about this is just how utterly unique this beer is. It is a beer that gives me a perspective on how, I don't want to say Europeans, but maybe how Belgians would craft what in the States would be a typical IPA. And what's so unique about the Belgian version of, you know, what they are essentially doing as an IPA is the fact that it's got these really strong hoppy notes that lead, and then they disappear very quickly. And you can really tell that the hops is this very specific flavor that hits you, but which is riding upon all of what makes a really good Belgian ale so nice to drink, where it's just got that deep, well-crafted complexity to it. In first place, I do still have to give it though to the classic Duvel. This, just again, from beer history kind of perspective in a way, is just a really interesting concept. This idea of a, you know, just hybrid beer. You've got the 8.5% ABV. You've got that strong, rich, deep feeling of Belgian ale, but with a very sort of light, crisp, hoppy, lemony, summery sort of feeling in a way where there are elements of almost like a saison, almost a sort of a, I don't want to say a wheat ale because this is not a wheat ale, but those sorts of ideas of those summery, bright kind of notes. A little bit of that almost lager pilsner kind of quality to it relative to something like some of those darker Belgian beers. And also just the good Belgian foundation. I gotta give it to the original. The Duvel beers are really good quality. If you can find also these more specialty ones, so the original, right, is more available, but if you can see these two, give them a try as well. They'll give you an interesting flavor profile relative to the classic. It's always nice to just try something new. So anyway, yeah, that's my assessment. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my assessment, if you think I'm totally off, if you would rank these the other way around. If you love hops, I could 100% see you putting this one first, and again, they're tied. But yeah, if you can, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. As always, just be respectful, and I'll see you next time.